Hello, everyone. Today, we're diving into the world of TikTok plus-sized travel. It'll be a fun ride, so let's begin.
I'm a fat woman traveling, and this is the seat right now. I literally go onto half of the next person's seat, so I'm like kind of worried that I'm gonna sit beside someone who's fatphobic and I can't like put this armrest up during takeoff and landing. And I just like honestly don't know how this is gonna go, and there's just like so much fear when you're flying as a fat person, because like some people are really upset to sit beside fat people, so like look, taking up like half of their okay, we're doing this, we're flying. I asked for a seatbelt extender. I deserve to fly and I deserve to take up space, and the seat should be bigger.
So this person is on a flight and people are boarding, and she's worried that the person sitting next to her might not like sitting next to her because she takes up part of their seat. And she says that the person who wouldn't like sitting next to her because she takes up part of their seat is fatphobic. But it isn't fatphobic to not want to touch a stranger. I, and most other people, don't like the idea of touching any stranger. This isn't a fat versus skinny thing, it's a I don't want to touch any random person thing. I'm just more likely to touch a fat person because obviously there's more person to possibly touch. And in the middle of the video, she talks about how hard it is to fly while fat because people don't like sitting next to fat people. I don't like this idea that any person who doesn't feel comfortable touching a fat person or with someone taking up part of their seat is fatphobic. Again, I don't want to touch any stranger on a plane more than I have to. If there was another passenger on the flight that set their small child next to me in my seat, and they were like, hey, this child is going to stay here this whole flight, thanks, I'd be like, no. And it's not because I hate children, it's because I bought this seat and I didn't sign up to be hugged up against another person the whole time. This problem isn't about touching fat people, it's about respecting other people's space that they paid for. And she's only considering herself as a fat person in this situation. What about someone that's autistic and may have sensory issues, so being squeezed up against another person for a whole flight might be extremely uncomfortable for them? Or what about someone who's claustrophobic that might have the same problem? There are so many reasons someone might not want to sit next to another person that's taking up half their seat that they're being squished up against for an entire flight, other than this person is fatphobic and doesn't like being near fat people. And then she said a statement at the end that was, I deserve to fly, I deserve to take up space. Says who? Nobody really deserves to fly. And you are allowed to take up space, just not someone else's space. That's the key part. She fully acknowledged that she takes up half of somebody else's seat on this flight. You are not entitled to that space. You are not entitled to the space somebody else paid for. And the last thing she said was, the seats should be bigger. Maybe. That's a completely different discussion, though. That's like saying, I don't believe that tipping should exist, so I'm not going to tip my server. If you live in the United States, you should tip your servers because that's how they survive. Yes, tipping is stupid and we shouldn't really have to do it, but if you decide not to based on principle because you think tipping shouldn't exist, then you are being a dick. And it's the same with plane seats. Even if they should be bigger, that still doesn't entitle you to take up somebody else's space. And this woman clearly has a lot of anxiety about flying while fat, but all of that could be fixed by buying 2 seats. Then she wouldn't have to go through all of this anxiety. She wouldn't have to worry about who's sitting next to her. She could just have 2 seats, and all of her problems would be solved. Simple.
Instead of buying an expensive $52 seatbelt extender on Amazon that isn't going to be accepted by the airlines and may not keep you safe, what I do as a fat flyer is I get into my seat, I call the flight attendant, and when they show up, I say nice and loud, "I'm too fat for this seatbelt. Do you think I could get a seatbelt extender, please?" And they always say, "You bet, sure, I'll get one for you." And by being loud and proud, what I'm doing is making sure everyone in the vicinity knows that I'm not ashamed to be a fat flyer. I am going to advocate for my own safety. And for everybody else who might be ashamed to ask for an extender, you're just modeling that there's nothing to be ashamed of. You deserve to fly safely and comfortably. Oh, what's going on with
I feel like her version of events in this plane scenario starts out with her loudly asking for a seatbelt extender, and then this swelling confidence rises up in all the other fat people on the plane that have been too scared to ask for a seatbelt extender. And then one of them suddenly stands up and is like, "I want a seatbelt extender." And then another person stands up and is like, "Me too." And then it's just this chorus of fat people standing up asking for seatbelt extenders while she smiles with pride in her seat. When in reality, when all the other fat people on the plane who were going to ask for a seatbelt extender hear her, they're going to be annoyed because she's being super loud. And now they have to quietly ask for a seatbelt extender because they don't want everyone on the plane thinking that all fat people are that loud and annoying on planes. And if you want the entire plane to hear you ask for a seatbelt extender, why even call the flight attendant to your seat? Why not wait until they are as far away from you as possible and then yell at them across the plane that you are a super fat person and would like a seatbelt extender? That's how you really get the plane's attention. There's a pro tip for you that you can try next time. But overall, I love everything about this TikTok, from the ridiculous advice to the fact that she didn't or couldn't edit out those last few seconds of the video of her tampering with the camera before she uploaded this video. It's just amazing. I love every part of it. Never change.
I get when it comes to flying while plus size is, why don't you consider the people?
So this video was responding to this idea of, why aren't fat people more considerate for the people who have to sit next to them in an airplane? First off, that kind of question comes off really arrogant and really ignorant to me, because it has this baked-in assumption that fat people somehow don't know how fat they are, or don't know that they take up the amount of space that they take up. Fat people are constantly reminded, every minute of every day, how much space they're taking up, and are made to feel bad for it. I already commented below this video how fat people like myself are forced to scrunch themselves into tiny little uncomfortable balls when they're sitting next to a skinny person, because God forbid we take up one more iota of space than the skinny person wants. Oh, and they have to be close to the gross, icky fat person. And some ignorant person responded to my comment saying, well, that's what you're making the skinny person do. The skinny person is forced to move over or scrunch up when they sit next to a fat person. If your idea of a counter argument is just to go, no, you, uno reverse, that's not really compelling, and it tells me you're not really interested in having a nuanced conversation about something, because you're totally ignoring that different circumstances exist. Second off, when I try to scrunch up in a plane seat, it is because I am trying to make skinny people feel better. I am trying to put their comfort before mine, which shouldn't be the case, but it's what's expected of fat people. However, when a skinny person scrunches up away from me, it is because they would rather make themselves uncomfortable than possibly accidentally touch me or be near me. Most public interactions I've had with skinny people do not give a shit about how much space they take up. And the more I try to scrunch myself and make more room for them to be polite, the more they'll take advantage of that and just spread out more, even if they really don't need it.
This video starts out with this person saying that all fat people know exactly how much space they take up because they're reminded of it all the time. If that's true, then fat people should know if they are large enough that they take up more than one full plane seat. And if that's the case, why aren't they paying for that extra space? And she also said something like, God forbid we take up an iota more space than a skinny person wants. Well, if that iota of space you're taking up is a skinny person's space, then yes, the skinny person has every right to be upset about it. How dare skinny people feel entitled to the space they paid for? I'm fat and they're skinny, so I have a right to their space for my own comfort, even if it's at the expense of their comfort. It's only fair. And she says that she's trying to put skinny people's comfort before hers by being more uncomfortable on flights so she doesn't take up extra space. But that's not even how any of this should be looked at. This scenario should be based solely on respecting other people's space and resources. If I'm at a restaurant with a friend and I'm really hungry and we agree to share an appetizer, I obviously won't eat the entire dish, even if I'm very hungry. Not because I feel like I should sacrifice being able to satisfy my own hunger so my friend can eat, but because I'm respecting the fact that the meal is shared, so it would be rude of me to eat more than my fair share. I can't go to my friend and be like, hey, I haven't eaten all day, so I deserve to eat 75% of the food, but we're still going to split the price 50-50 because I shouldn't have to sacrifice for you. And this is the same when you buy a plane seat. You are buying an allotted amount of space. So you should also respect the space that other people paid for. That's it. There is no sacrificing involved in this scenario. And then there's this statement that when skinny people scrunch away from fat people, it's because they'd rather be uncomfortable than touch a fat person. Did you ever consider that touching you might be uncomfortable for them? She's like, skinny people would rather touch a wall than touch me. Yeah, and what's the problem with that? Most people, including myself, would rather touch a wall than touch a random stranger. And at the end, she said, skinny people will take up more space than they need just because they can. Yeah, well, if the extra space they're taking up is their space, then what's the problem? Just because you and other fat people sometimes have to limit the amount of space you take up so you don't encroach into other people's space, that doesn't mean that the size 2s of the world should have to do the same because of, what, equality? Everyone should be respectful of other people's space in public. Period. Fat people, skinny people, children, everyone. And you are not entitled to anybody else's space, no matter what size you are. But yeah, that's all I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in my next one.